I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm joined by Father Stephen McKenna. We recently did a podcast about the topic of courtship. It's a very good one. I will attach it to this show. Father really discussed. We kind of went all over the place, but discussed many different things, even marrying non-Catholics, the vocation of a woman. Should a woman have a career or vocation and focus on the children, etc. It's very good as always with Father McKenna. So please go check that out. Today we're going to talk about platonic relationships and the dangers thereof. So Father, thank you very much for coming on. And I guess I don't know exactly where you start with this. Maybe just tell us why it's a dangerous thing, I suppose.
Maybe defining platonic relationships too is probably a good starting point, because I think the term platonic is something that is probably not understood by everybody. Some people might be thinking that we're talking about Platonic philosophy, and that's not seen. We're not crossing our shows here, Kevin. So that's
Could be interesting.
but Platonic relationships are relationships between members of the opposite sex that are non-romantic in nature, we could say. Basically being friends with people who are of the opposite sex, and in and of itself, on a surface level, seems to be perfectly fine. But I think there's a lot of caveats to go along with that, and boundaries that people should probably put into place regarding those things. Um, I think the number one point for it would be a recognition of different states of life. You have to understand what state of life you are in order to act appropriately with the people that are around you. If you are, we'll leave aside, single and not even ready to court or anything like that. For that's besides the point. But let's just talk about adults here. Um, if you are looking for courtship, as we did talk about in the courtship show, it necessitates that you become friendly with people of the opposite sex, right? So you have to get to know them, you have to start talking to them, and to start off, you're not singling out only one person at a time. You might be, carrying on, friendships with multiple, I always speak from the masculine point of view, of course, but it's, you might be, a man might be carrying on multiple relationships of friendship in a good way with multiple ladies at the same time, because he's not sure who's the right person to really get more serious about yet. And that's okay. Again, as long as it's done in the setting of sort of like a group setting, you're not isolating yourselves, you're not opening yourself up to too much temptation towards sin, then then that's appropriate, because you're trying to find a spouse or a potential spouse, and you, by necessity, you have to become friends with and get to know people in that regard. um, but the danger lies in where you end up just becoming really good friends and spending this sort of inappropriate alone time, under the guise of being friends. There's a lot of people who have gone into situations thinking, well, we're not even dating, we're just friends anyways, it doesn't, there's nothing to worry about, and then ended up in dangerous moral situations. um, Whereas the on the flip side of that, um, so so you don't want to regret something the next day, as it were. um, on the flip side of that is the marriage, the people who are married. And I think that takes on a whole different parameter, that you have to be extraordinarily careful um, about being overly friendly with people of the opposite sex. It's fine to be friendly with, and I mean, you're married, Kevin. I mean, how many things do you do as a couple going out with other couples? That's probably a regular occurrence, that married couples tend to spend time with other married couples. Their kids can play together. But usually it ends up being a lot of conversation between the dads in one group and the moms in another group. And do they mix and interact? Of course you do. That's normal and natural. But what you want to stay away from is too much where it's just, one husband talking to another man's wife or vice versa. Um, because that is really, you can say, oh, we're friends, oh, we grew up together, we whatever. Well, things change a little bit. Focuses change and priorities type of change. Number one, you don't want to create jealousy in your spouse. That's something that's extraordinarily dangerous um, to give reason for jealousy. So, what do we mean by jealousy? Again, jealousy is a word I think that gets misused commonly. People use jealousy as envious. Envious is that you are desiring of another person's goods. Jealousy is that you are overprotective of your own goods, and um, so it is. So jealousy is, I am, you know, um, if from a husband's standpoint, if he sees his wife talking to another man for really long, prolonged periods of time, she seems to be having a great time and laughing and joking and everything like that, it's a temptation to become suspicious. You don't want to be overly protective and to be, and to be hurt by, unnecessarily by. Um, and so I think that's a real concern. And on the flip side of that is to people are overly confident in their own um, strength of will, and that's not that's not intelligent or honest. We're none of us are above weakness in the face of temptation. So if you are good friends with, you consider yourself really good friends with somebody of the opposite sex, well, then that means there is some level of attraction that is there. And you can lie to yourself all you want to and say, "Oh, just a friend." Like we would never. I view her as a sister, or view him as a brother, or whatever you usually get said in those things. But the fact that you get on so easily is because there is some level of attraction there. Now, it might not be something that you would ever think of yourself married to that person, but it is going to present the possibility of temptation, and we have to be distrusting of ourselves in that way of temptation. So I think it's most important in those situations where you're either entered into a true courtship and or even more so an engagement, and then most importantly as um, as a married couple.
And I'll ask you this then, Father, getting off of the married type, because for me that is, I shouldn't say it's clear, but it makes sense. I mean, I'm maybe others it doesn't, but I mean, I even in the first year of my marriage, I kind of experienced it myself where I guess I'm a tease. I'm a guy who is before marriage, especially. I guess I teased girls, or I guess flirted. I didn't intend to, but I think that's just my personality. I'm a sanguine. And at the first year of marriage, I had a girl who had been a friend before I got married, and I caught myself doing it. And I was like, "Whoa!" It had no intention. I didn't intend
Yeah,
to tease or flirt or anything. Totally not at all. It was totally innocent. But I remember really sitting back and thinking, like, I can't do that. I
yeah,
mean, I can't do. I can't. I had to. And so really, I almost didn't say a word to her the rest of the time we were together, and maybe that was too much. But I mean, but I think it is something that since I've caught myself in it, I am aware. But I guess the other point that I guess I would like to ask you about, Father, is if, because I think there's a fine line. So if you're in this courtship mode and you're interested in maybe looking at different, we'll say girls. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna go and spend some time with her in a group and some time with her in a group, and obviously that's all fine. Now, what I've seen also happen is you get friend groups
hmm
and mixed men, men and women, and there's no intention from anybody of courtship. Or I shouldn't say that. There's no expressed intention of courtship, but there's this kind of like this idea of we're just going to be platonic friends forever. And typically, I seem to from what I see, it's because maybe the women like the friend zone, and the men are too afraid to actually ask them to take a step further, or to, hey, are you interested in courting me? Does that make
yeah.
sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you can actually end up having two realities in that same thing. You could, in some instances, have just a, let's say it's a group of people that you all graduated high school together or something like that, right? And it's a mixed group of people that just have like commonalities. You spent a lot of time together growing up through the years of school and everything like that, and it's very easy for all of you to interact in a group setting like that. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, because that's, but that is seen by everybody as just a natural reality. And that if somebody were to get married or become, dating somebody or whatever, you'd be welcoming their spouse in, and like that takes on its own natural aspect, and that is something that's effortless and makes, and nobody has any false pretenses about, nobody, there's no feeling of like, well, I think Johnny likes me, but I don't want to actually commit to anything with him or whatever. It's just, like I said, it flows in extraordinarily naturally for everybody. Everybody's having a great time, and nobody's, there's no pretending of anything there. The danger is that when you don't have that natural unity of a group together, is that you end up with these things where, and the reality of it is it usually is the man who is the one who is, I guess you could say, sort of unaware of what of this of the reality of the situation. He thinks he's getting on with one of the girls of the group, and girls tend to be more group oriented anyways. I think there's a feeling of safety in groups, that it's just a natural sort of aspect where they tend to cluster in groups at a time. And then, maybe a couple of guys come along into that group setting, and that's fine. That's wonderful. That's how these things go on. But when there is a realization that, I think that this person is hoping for more out of the situation, and I'm either not ready to commit to anything like that, or not interested in that person in that way, and then it means that you have to have a conversation. You cannot lead on in these ways, because then that is, as we talked about in the courtship thing, those are those girl games, those are those kind of, those are the things that end up, wasting a man's time and efforts and things like that. And girls, if you need examples of like somebody that's interested in you, maybe you are actually a little bit aloof to those things, which I tend to think that you kind of usually know. But if you need examples, like if a guy is talking to you a lot more than he is to the other members of your little group, if he's, pulling out his wallet to pay for stuff that you're doing, if he's, kind of putting on like a little bit of a, think of it almost like Animal Kingdom, like, that it's like if he's trying to show off a little bit and be kind of have this over like machismo, he's overshooting in that way, then usually means that he's interested in either you or somebody in the group. And um you have to just sort of recognize those signs as to what they are, and to pay attention to them, and not just let, and not, too often I think that just somebody gets strung along in the friend group because you don't want to be mean, you don't want to say like, hey, I don't think this, but you're just not, you're actually making it worse, and so it's okay to let somebody down. You don't, you're not going to be everybody's friend all the time. Just do it nicely. You remember, always have charity in those situations, for everything. Again, the guy had the gumption. There's so many times that ladies complain about how so few guys will work up the courage to actually. They're so wimpy and they won't work up the courage to go talk to them. And they kind of resent the fact that they have to almost go chase after the guys because they're so emasculated. Well, this guy took it upon himself to come and talk. That you should at least be appreciative of that. And so, you know, that's um, that's um, that's something to be. So you have to have charity in those things, as an utmost point. But yeah, don't in that sense, don't create that friend zone for too long, because people definitely resent it. And I know it can go in the opposite direction too. It just tends to be, in that specific situation, it tends to be very much more. lopsided. That and I think it has to do with the females are generally less confrontational, and the opinions of others around them matter, and also they don't want to be, they genuinely care that, as part of that feminine quality that is attractive, that they have a genuine care not to hurt something, like or somebody, and they don't want to be the one to have to say, listen, like, I think you might have the wrong idea here. Um, so, they don't want that. I understand that's, but you have to look at the bigger picture, the greater good of it, and realize, like, no, it's actually better for me to be, sort of like the bitter medicine. Better to take the bitter medicine and be healed than it is to continue on with a slowly festering situation, and um, so that's you are being more merciful by, you know, taking the time to just be honest in those situations. Um,
Perfect.
and then I do think one aspect that is important to talk about for the platonic relationship in regards to anybody in any kind of serious relationship, again, whether it's courtship or if it's marriage, is that there's also the scandal point to be made. That if you are overly friendly and spending too much time with somebody of the other sex, even if there is nothing improper about it, even if there is this understanding between you and your spouse that there would never would be anything inappropriate, and I've just known this person my entire life, you have to be also understanding of what it looks like from the outside. People aren't blind and deaf, and so what do they see? They're going to start to wonder. People are going to start to question. And again, guys should be comfortable just hanging out. For if you want friends, you should be comfortable hanging out with other men. Women, you should be comfortable hanging out with other ladies. Um, and that is something to be, try to be embraced and actually worked at. That's something that's important for that. And if you find it just happens to not be your point of ease, um try to make it more at ease, because you want to be proper above all else. And so, I mean, sometimes using an absurd example is probably one of the easiest ways to illustrate it. But let's say that, I mean, what would a parishioner say if me as a priest were to all of a sudden be seen just spending huge amounts of time with a woman from the parish, laughing and joking, and going to visit and doing all these things? You, People would honestly have to fight against not questioning if something improper is going on. And if you think that only exists in the realm of a priest interacting with another woman, you're wrong. It exists in every vocational aspect of that. So if you're thinking, well, like, I know we're just friends, she knows we're just friends, even my wife thinks that we're just, knows that we're just friends. That's not what, the people that are just happen to be around the social hall after mass think, or in necessarily, or at least they have to fight it in themselves to fight that thought off. So there is a scandal aspect to it too, that is just has to be a conscious thought. And that's why, any real, um like, very, strongly platonic relations between married people, oftentimes, are inappropriate in and of themselves. And so, um, and if that's the case, then you have to realize it's potentially sinful. So, depending on how far it goes.
Right. Yeah, you can't be too careful. I know that's for sure. I mean, that's something that I think we don't think of enough providing scandal, if we provide it, or, the things that we do, especially things we do in public or the things we talk about publicly. That includes social media, ladies and gentlemen. That's I get that really scandal. I think that's a topic for a whole podcast, honestly, because I think that is so important. And as you say, Father, even if you have the best intentions, if someone else sees it otherwise, it does actually matter, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But
Yeah. But I mean, and again, it's not to say to be rude or to be, you can't be
right,
friendly. You can, again, but it's, you start to realize that you need to be hanging around people that are in your, like that are in your same similar life patterns as you. We as priests, we do go and visit people in their homes. We do have lay people that we even consider to be friends, but we always have to keep a certain amount of carefulness and barrier up to ensure that, one, we can still remain objective in giving counsel and making and being judged of of situations in life, but two, that we don't give and two, that we don't give any false ideas, but also moreover, like, I should want to spend time with priests because I am a priest, and that is my premier primary social circle, is to be around people of a similar vocation as myself. It's the reason why sisters live in community generally. It's because those should be the people that you're spending time with. You're a sister, now you spend time with sisters. Um, it's why those ideas of this kind of like those rogue solitary sisters is not really a real thing. Like that's and um, that's also the reason why married people, should tend to spend time with other married couples. It's not to say that you don't ever talk to your friend who hasn't gotten married yet. And it's a little bit more confusing when you're in your 20s and you've just gotten married and a lot of your friends haven't gotten married. And yeah, there's also probably a little bit more room for wiggle room that's there too. You know what I mean? That in that way of propriety. But if you're my age, if you're I'm 38. If you're 38, and you're married, most of your friends are also married too at that point in time in life. So you should be spending time with people who have the same sort of, basic aspects to their lives. And it's not to say that you can't cross over and, oh, father and I are gonna, invite father over for a drink tonight, or my buddy from high school is coming over. But you have to have kind of that caution and that desire that, yeah, it's okay to interact with these other people some from time to time, but more so you know it's safe in these situations, because then it's like, oh, then me and my wife can go out with this person and their wife and this person and their wife, and our kids can do stuff together and everything like that, and then that just homogenizes a lot more nicely, whereas to doing the other doesn't. And so, yeah, I think it really begs merits that kind of viewpoint. Okay, I'm married now. I have to think a little bit more differently. I have to think about the concern for my wife and the concern about propriety and the viewship and just protecting and guarding myself. And does that mean I'm rude? Of course not. Does that mean I can't laugh at the joke that's told by somebody else? Of course not. I can't not have a conversation or whatever it is. It's more of a looking at, like, where's the majority of your time spent, and then that's, who, if you have a couple that you and your wife are friends with, who are you, the one that you consider more your friend? Is it the husband or is it the wife? If you consider the wife more your friend than the husband, and he's just sort of tagging along, and you're the husband in the relationship, then you probably have to think to yourself, ooh, I better be careful here. Like, I might be treading on dangerous ground. And especially if it's a single female, that's, or and vice versa, if it's, if a woman talking to a single male or something like that. So
perfect, Father. I really appreciate it. I think it's a really important topic, and I think you covered it very, very well. If anyone appreciated Father's commentary and his words of wisdom, well, go check him out at the YAG. in Cincinnati. That's what was it again, Father? July 7th and 8th
July 7th through the 9th.
through the 9th.
So
And that's
plenty of
in
plenty of platonic interaction at the end.
this is true. So I guess not entirely fitting for this topic, but I want to plug it anyway because again, these guys they do a great job over there, and they really, I think it's got to be the biggest meeting of young Catholics, traditional Catholics, at least in America, and there you can get more of Father's wisdom and honest to goodness, I mean, really, I'm sure Father, you're there, and I imagine I'm sure you probably have other priests there as well to help spiritually guide and answer some of these questions. Some of these questions that are very important. If it comes to relationships, if it comes to again, if it's platonic or even potential marriage or courtship.
Hmm.
These are things that yeah, I think there are a lot of questions to be had, and I'm sure you priests are there to answer them. So go check that out, yagincincy.org. Father, I very much appreciate it. Until next time, God bless you.
God bless you too. Thanks.